All right, welcome back. Welcome back. I hope your lunch was amazing. I know mine was, and we intentionally set this up for this group because we know they bring so much energy to the conversation. So I'm glad to have these gentlemen up on the stage with me today. I wanted to open by just saying that in the aftermath of the pandemic, businesses grapple with lower labor participation rates while employees struggle to find affordable places to live. The business community is now recognizing housing as a critical component of economic development. So today we're going to learn from our Lisk Hampton Roads and Shenandoah Valley partnerships on those initiatives about how to grow connections between economic vitality through housing. On stage with me this afternoon is Jay Grant, the Executive Director of Lisk Hampton Roads. He and his office specialize in affordable housing production and preservation, wealth building, small business assistance, and community resilience. I also have Jay Langston. He has over 38 years of experience in economic development, strengthening community engagement, and entrepreneurial initiatives. He is currently leveraging that experience as the Executive Director of the Shenandoah Valley Partnership. And I also have Jalil, who you heard from this morning, and he's going to assist us in answering some of the questions related to housing and economic development. So this session, Where Will My Employees Sleep? How attainable housing options impact economic vitality. And I just want to say one prerequisite to being on this stage was that your name had to start with a J. So I think we've accomplished that today. So I'll throw it to Jay Grant just to get us started, if that's all right.
Good deal.
All right.
Yes. Jay Grant here, Lisk Hampton Roads. Some of you, I recognize a lot of familiar faces in the audience, may know me from DHCD. So formerly I was at the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development. But just a brief background about what we do. Lisk Local Initiative Support Corporation is a 501c3 nonprofit known as a Community Development Finance Institution, or CDFI. And it is actually the largest CDFI in the country. So we're nationwide. We have 38 local offices. So I represent one of our 2 Virginia offices. The other one is in Richmond. We also have a rural Lisk office, which covers rural America. And I really want, I'll do some plugs throughout talking, hopefully, about how we can better connect to rural Lisk, where that makes sense, to some of their resources. But essentially, as you said, we are all about bettering the community. And so what does that look like? It may look like injecting financing into housing developments. We focus on affordable housing, but we also can do mixed income, mixed use as well, so housing and commercial. We dole out grants for several nonprofits throughout the community, doing a variety of different activities, from anything from, again, housing to youth recreation to we partner with folks like Habitat, actually, and other great organizations, YMCA, et cetera, to uplift the community. And we are involved in wealth building. And so what we do there is we really want to look at how can we build up the potential for individuals and families in our region. And what that looks like through our financial opportunity centers is actually increasing income, increasing their wealth building potential, so that they have greater tools and access to greater tools for their family, but they are a greater economic impact in their local economy. And as you mentioned, community resilience. This is it's kind of a newer term that we're using, but we've really been doing this for quite some time. But what we're saying resilience is kind of a holistic look at how we improve our community, how we make our community resilient against economic downturns, against natural devastation, against any types of other types of events. And so when we focus on one particular geographical area, one particular neighborhood, we want families, individuals to be able to weather the storm of a recession. We want them to weather physical storms, et cetera, et cetera. And so we've gotten involved and have some great partnerships in that area. So I'll stop there as an introduction. Sorry.
No, it's great. That was great. Jay, thank you. Jay.
The second J. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be here. I represent the Regional Economic Development and Marketing Organization for 140 miles on I-81. That'll give you the sort of idea of the area that we cover. The presentations heretofore have been a perfect lead-in for what we do. In economic development, we are trying to develop, and improve the quality of life of our citizens so that some of the issues that you've heard about, maybe we can avoid. We, have seen dynamic changes in the business community in the last several years. I told Mel, she set up a perfect saying for how businesses operate. I'm going to be more blunt. Companies don't locate to do you a favor. They are locating because they can get the people and the quality of life that those people will want to stay there. And guess how this works? Part of the quality of life is housing, and because if people are going to work for a business, they need a place to live, and a business needs for people to have a place to live so that they can recruit the talent. So it is really a simple, logic chain there. I will give an anecdote and then let it go. I see Rebecca Castle back there. This is actually a project that she was working. It was 3 years ago, I think it was, this time of year. We were working a project and assisting Rebecca on this, and we had a great meeting. We were in the final stages of this, and the consultant running this project, it happened to be Kava, looked at us and said, "Oh, got a question. Where are our people going to live?" I had not heard that question in at least 2 decades and did not have any idea of what we are facing now. And it's a serious impediment for us in our region because, first of all, I want this to be a great takeaway for you to consider. We're a rural region and we're growing. Not every rural region can say that. The second portion of this is there is always a little bit of an issue with housing stock in traditionally rural areas. Well, because of our growth and what you saw Mel present, we are getting a double whammy on that. And so it is critical for us to retain the talent for our business growth, and they need a place to live in that they can afford.
Thanks, Jay. Appreciate that. Jalil, I'd like to ask you a question. As it relates to, we talk about these attainable housing options, and how they impact economic vitality. Could you talk a little bit? We heard at the opening, some of the challenges that you were up against. Could you talk a little bit about your experience as it relates to the connectivity between housing and your ability to be economically viable?
Hello again. Third J. So yeah, no. When we ended up living in a hotel, I still had to go to work. Luckily, I still had a job to go to, but it made it hard because it was the summertime. Like I mentioned before, I have 3 boys, as you all seen in the thing. I was paying for them to go to summer camp, like $150 per kid. I had to pay for my truck, $300 a month. I had to pay for the insurance, and we had to pay for food as well. And then we had to pay weekly for the hotel room itself. So luckily I didn't have to go through unemployment because I was homeless. Luckily my job still worked with me, and my wife's job worked with her as well. But it was really tough trying to maintain all of that and still have hope that something was going to change. So To answer your question, I can't really say that there was a distinctive insignificance between the two because I still had employment. So I was still able to get up every day and go to work. So.
But you said a key thing is that your employer worked with you, right? Like they recognized your experience and they were able to connect your experience to continue to give you opportunity. It didn't define who you were.
Right.
It wasn't about your character.
Right.
It was about a moment.
Yeah.
And so I think that's an important thing that you shared, you know, that
Yeah, I had been there at that point last year. It was like 2.5 years with them, and one of the hardest workers there. And so they were able to actually, you know, bend over backwards to help me with certain hours. My availability was changing now, and I might have to leave work early. A lot shifted, and they stayed course with me the whole time. So
that's great. Okay. So brief introductions there, and now we want to open questions from the floor. These gentlemen have a lot of knowledge, wisdom, and we want to leverage that in this moment. So this is an open dialogue. If there are questions, please raise your hands. We're happy to recognize you. My colleague Chris has the microphone. So are there any questions immediately? Yeah, got a hand up? Great.
Other side of the room.
Yeah. I'm timing you.
First, I want to say how inspired I am that I was at the Go Virginia Region 8 meeting yesterday, and I almost put on the same clothes this morning because I thought nobody from the economic development Go Virginia people are going to be there. They wouldn't know, but actually I sat next to Jay, so I'm really glad that I changed my clothes, but that's the first thing. But what I would like to ask, especially, all the J's, is it came through loud and clear at the Go Virginia Economic Development meeting that housing is a very big concern of employers moving here. Childcare, by the way, is another big concern. But when you answer that question from the perspective of trying to entice new businesses here, what do you think their expectation is? What do they expect your answer to be? I mean, are they sort of looking at sort of a bit of the salaries they're going to pay, and they are trying to translate that into where people can live? I mean, how do you address that question?
Mary, you ask a great question. Yeah, she didn't expect to see me in a tie today, and I did this because I knew he was going to show up in one, just so y'all know.
And you did change your clothes, I know that.
I try to. You ask a great question because this is fundamental to the way that our world has changed in economic development. In working with the businesses, everything that you have heard leading up to my discussion is intrinsically involved in that site location decision, whether it's an expansion of one of your existing companies or it's a new company that's coming in. They are asking the questions. The first thing that they ask, the sites are always important, but beyond that point, it is, where are my people? And now number two is, where are they going to live? Because everyone is facing a housing issue. It's worse in some areas than in others, but what they're looking for is our thought process, our progress, how we are addressing it. Do we have thoughts? As a matter of fact, I was working with a prospect. It was a virtual call Monday a week ago in one of my harder to serve areas, more rural. And they had a plan to develop some housing. I am convinced we are going to have a prospect visit because they were proactive and have a plan for a 200-unit housing development. That was how important that was.
And if I can add, Mary, in Hampton Roads, of course, there's a large military presence. And so that's, I look at them as they're an employer. And there are actual communities where they've told our servicemen and women, and I don't anecdotally told, don't go to this community. And so, and that may be because of crime issues. It may be because of older housing stock that's dilapidated. There's a good variety of housing stock in that area, but just like in Stanton, Augusta, Waynesboro area, there's a crunch. And we can talk about why there's a crunch. We all know the various reasons as to why. The housing stock's not moving. One of the big things I say is that folks benefited from the 2% and 3% interest rates. Yes. They're not moving. So folks who want to get into a first-time homebuyer situation can't. Folks at our table, we were talking about for older adults looking to maybe downsize, they can't. So there's all these issues. But I think we want to be in a place where large employers, mid-size, even small employers can look at your community and say, as a whole, and even specific areas, there's available housing. And I'll say one example is when you look at North Carolina. My wife's family is from the Triangle area. They have amongst the youngest housing stock in the country. It's very easy for employers to look at the Triangle and say, we're going to put our company here. There's a lot of infill development happening, and there's a lot of greenfield development happening. So how can the SAW region reinvent its housing stock? That's a terminology I'm using now, because what that means is not only, it means we've got to build those 200 unit developments, but it also means we need to look at our older communities and help to reinvent them. That might mean investing. I'm not exactly sure. It could be different methods, but there's got to be a way to turn some of those 1950s, 1900 homes into something that has modern amenities, because that's what people want.
What is infill and greenfield? What do you mean by that?
So infill, you want to take that, Jay?
No, go ahead. That's a
Infill,
great question.
Infill, I would say, is an existing neighborhood with existing homes where maybe there's a vacant lot and a developer comes in and builds on that lot, or maybe there's an older unit that is substantially rehabilitated to the effect that at the end of the day, you basically have a new house in an existing and or older neighborhood. And then greenfield is simply, as it kind of implies, that there's really nothing there. So it's the easier type of development, your traditional kind of suburban development where maybe it was a farm and you're just converting it over to a neighborhood.
Okay, Dan and then David.
Quick question. When you're having these conversations with employers, do you sense that there is a strong correlation between the type of housing they would like to see developed and the wages that they're looking to pay, or is there a disconnect there?
Dan, that's a great question. I will let both of these in. They are paying attention to the housing stock and affordability. That question is getting asked. Now, yes, if they are looking for a higher cost area, the wages are typically being adjusted, accordingly to those different areas. I mean, that's part of what business does, is they, look at that return on investment and do that calculus. And in here, we're about the U.S. average, and so they can pretty much trust our data going, that's probably where we should be from a salary range. I want to give a shout out to Jalil also, though. It's also about their workforce. The business community is paying much more attention to where their workforce is coming from. And one of the things that I applaud him is that he's got a job. He was able to get a job. And how difficult that can be for people who have, a felony or even a misdemeanor in some cases. And we know that there are classifications that's relevant, but it's not relevant in many ways. And I think that that's one of the issues, too, that our businesses are asking about. What about underserved and displaced workers, as an opportunity, and where are they going to live? And that is really a question, so you may be surprised, but our existing industries here and existing businesses are starting to ask about. They are very concerned about their growth, again, because we are growing, we're fortunate, but where are those additional people going to live?
If I could just speak briefly. So first of all, thank you so much for that. Being in here today has been an experience. I've been a little bit taken aback. I can compare it to my first time in Manhattan, being in Times Square and because I had no idea any of you guys existed, any of your jobs existed, any of the foundations geared towards making a change in housing. I had no idea because up until last year it didn't affect me. So I could give a damn about housing until it happened to me. But I'm pretty sure, like in Chris's slideshow, soon I'll be at the top of the stupid mountain or whatever he was saying. Because I am going to go home and do my research and learn more because I have been affected by it. But what I can say, and that goes to say, I don't know any statistics, any data. I don't know anything, but I do know people. I do know situations. I do know circumstances. And I was just at work with a girl the other night. Never met her before, but we had been paired to work together. And so we were getting personal, and she was telling me that she had to move in with her family because she lost her house and she couldn't afford 3 times the rent for the rent and the 640 or whatever credit score that's being asked of us. All I can say is something needs to change. Obviously, right? That's why we're all here. But just speaking on my behalf and what I've been through, getting a job as a felon is already hard enough. Not to say that I didn't go to prison because I deserved it. Not to say that I might not even deserve the felony. In my opinion, I did what I did and I deserve, the punishment that came with it. But just being somebody who came home from prison and decided to go left instead of going, or decided to go right instead of left, life has been really challenging and hard enough to get a job. I ended up being a cook for a couple of years, not because I enjoy cooking. I'm a big boy. But that wasn't my career of choice. I got stuck there because of my felony. And so to overcome that and to find employment and to stick with a job and stay there and have housing and then lose housing and then have to go through the same thing I went through to get a job, but for a place to live. And it's harder to do it with a place to live than it is to get a job because I can go cut grass. I can do anything, to pay my bills and to do all that, but to find housing is completely different. I can't just say, hey, I'm gonna go stay with a family member. I have 3 children and a wife. So it's a little bit harder to overcome that battle as a felon. And like I was talking about with Jay, it was many times where I requested on applications when it was like, hey, are you a felon? Explain your case or whatever. I would explain what happened, and then I would also say I would love to meet with you all in person. That way I can explain my case. Because I feel like before me, I know a lot of felons that I grew up with who messed it up for people like me. And I understand that. Like, I understand that, you see that felony on that paper and you're like, oh, I'm not messing with them. And I get that, but that's not always the case with every person. I've been out of prison now. Next Sunday will make 5 years. I'll also be off probation. Next Sunday. Not a charge, not a run-in with the law. And so it just, just I wish that some of these were case by case. I understand both sides. I understand, you got 40 felons applying to live here. I'm not gonna go through all 40 and say, which one are you? Are you the good one, or are you gonna stay here and pay your rent and not cause trouble, or are you gonna be selling drugs in and out of here? Is there gonna be violence in and out of here? And I get that. But just being affected by that and being the person that I am has made it so much harder, but it's made it so much more worth it to continue to fight. And that's why I showed up here today, to just learn more from you guys and to learn more about what you are involved in and what you do and how I can also be of help.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Jay.
Fantastic example.
Thanks for that.
And if I can, Julia, I just want to say congratulations as well for all the hard work that you're doing to walk that path afterwards. And I know you're going to continue to do great things. And so echoing what you said, Jay, it kind of segues me into thinking about some of the activities we're involved with. Like you mentioned, just not being aware of certain fields, certain jobs, that kind of thing. And so one of the areas we get involved in, we call it kind of an umbrella of crime prevention or even crime intervention, two different things, but it doesn't necessarily look like what the common folks would think it looks like. It's field trips to the museum. It's, outings. It's youth recreation. Some of the things I've mentioned already. We actually applied for a $500,000 grant through Senator Warner and Kane's joint congressionally directed spending, which is the new name for earmarks, for very fancy, fancy name now. But that will be funding for those types of activities, because if we can help expose, in particular, youth in the communities in and around where we serve, then that's an economic development activity as well, because not only are we changing individuals' lives, and so they're exposed at a young age, they're saying, you know what, I'm not going to do those activities. Instead, I can see a path, beyond high school. And so now they're contributing to the local economy, et cetera, et cetera. I think going back to some of the things that employers look at, they're looking at the well-being of your community. And so all of these things factor in. Some, I'll just be a little bit repetitive, but they're looking at your school systems. They're looking at access to grocery stores. They're looking at crime, all different types of crime. So they're looking at the data. They can get it very easily. And now with AI, they're typing up something and getting reports spit out in 10 seconds that tells them everything they need to know. And so we as practitioners can help in these spaces. So we're helping individuals so that, hopefully, so also, we're having events and bringing in folks that have had similar situations that you've had, and talking to youth and saying, you know what, I don't want you all to go through what I went through. And so that, again, is helpful on the individual level, but it's helpful on a community level. And at the end of the day, we see it as economic development. And lastly, I'll just jive with housing is health as well. Our biggest contributor to what we do is our largest healthcare provider, Centera Health. They actually started our office with a sizable contribution. They believe in housing, community, and economic development as a way to reduce the repeat kind of overusage visits of the hospital systems. Those systems get overtaxed, and then when there are true emergencies, they don't have the capacity to handle them. That's just one little side of it. But overall, I think, and I know that our healthcare systems want to see our communities thrive as well.
Yeah. And so, there's this physical health, this mental health piece. There's also an economic health component. And we talked a lot about individuals over the last few minutes. And Jay Grant, I just wanted to understand, I know there's a financial counseling gap, right, in this region. What is List Hampton Roads doing as it relates to economic freedom and housing stability on the individual level?
So List Hampton Roads, and this is not isolated to Hampton Roads, but as an example, we have, as I mentioned, what we call financial opportunity centers. We are running now 5 or 6 now. There are over 130 of these in the country. This is a LISC, Local Initiative Support Corporation model. It started in Chicago years ago. It's basically a model of financial coaching, financial counseling, job training. It's a meet you where you are type of program. And so if what you need is obtaining your GED, then that's where we're going to start. If what you need is a certification to be a welder, then we're going to focus on that. And of course, as I mentioned, we have a handful of these in our area. They have different focuses. Recently, we partnered with a large nonprofit down in Hampton Roads, 4Kids Incorporated. They have launched an FOC in Chesapeake, in Suffolk, and then a hybrid model where they're partnering with local developers that are in the affordable housing space. And so developers that are, and in particular, a big one is Lawson and also Nussbaum, where they actually have community space in their communities, and they've allowed 4Kids to go into that space and have their classes. So they're bringing these classes to the community. These are low-income communities. And so, because we all know transportation, time, childcare, these are all issues. And so I'm coming home from 1, 2, 3 jobs maybe, and now I can, in the comfort of my own building where right next door someone is watching my kids, you're teaching me how to use Microsoft Excel. You're teaching me how to get certified. We also partner with Hampton Roads Workforce Council. We've been partnering with them the longest. And I mean, they're doing virtual reality job training. I mean, they're doing some really cool stuff. And so preparing our community members to be fully engaged and involved in the 21st century workforce. And again, going back to what employers look for, if they're looking at your area, they're looking at Stanton, Augusta, Waynesboro, and saying, this is, we're seeing these types of activities where there's all this active job training. This is the type of place that I want to bring my company. I hope that kind of helps to paint a picture.
That's great. Thank you.
Yes, I had a question about, I know that affordable housing is what we're talking about here, and to get to the end result that we all want, it's going to take time. Has there been any thought about what immediate changes to meet the needs now are before we get, to where we want to be? Some kind of creative ways to address the where will my employees sleep? Where does that start? And, what are some changes that can be done immediately to help address those problems while we're waiting to get the end results that we want?
I'll say sometimes I feel like it's okay to I like to think big, but sometimes it's okay to think small. And so one of our partnerships that we're in the process of activating is with our local Habitat office. And we're partnering with them on housing rehabilitation. And so we were saying in a number of meetings, how can we create the largest impact? We had a restricted budget, and we said, okay, if we're building new homes, we're going to be able to help you build X, but how can we elongate that? And so we landed on rehabilitation. And so we're going to do, I think it's over the next year and a half, 2 years, we're going to do about 10 housing rehabs. But those are 10 units that I'll say they didn't exist because they're dilapidated units that really no family should be going into. And so we're injecting 10 new housing units into the availability. And so that's something that we can do now, and we are doing now. We can have conversations And if we do, we should involve all of the right people, including the community, whatever community it is. So we're involved in community conversations with banks, with healthcare providers, neighborhoods, nonprofits, and but we don't want to overthink things. And so even with that, it comes right back to what you said. What are we going to do? And so I think we're all kind of, I'm sorry that I'm kind of asking a question to a question, but we've got to talk about it, be strategic, be holistic, but let's not take too long on that, and let's come up with reasonable actions that make sense in that particular community. And again, in our case, I think the habitat one for me is a good example of something small, but something we can do immediately.
Yeah. I'd like to add to that because I think the question is a really good one, and I will put a little bit of data behind my response, and I'm looking at it from the supply side. From the business perspective, they want to see, the housing perspective. I was talking about growth earlier. Growth is certainly what we want. No one wants rampant growth here, but I don't think we have to worry about that. But the alternative has very negative consequences. Our manufacturing community, and I'm only talking the manufacturing community here, is approximately, they have 3,100 unfilled jobs. Our manufacturers pay pretty well. Think about what if we could fill those jobs, where would they live? Just looking at Mel's numbers, you could see the graph. I mean, we're under supply now, and our businesses are continuing to grow, thank heavens, for our prosperity, for the health care, for all of the things that were mentioned about. The health care is a huge booster for economic development in our region, I will tell you. We must be thinking from a policy side, how do we provide the availability of housing to meet the needs for those who have certifications, for those who are just graduating. I mean, much of the housing they can't get into either, and all up the level. That is something that we have to focus on. Now, it's very easy for me to say that. I am not at the local level. I'm not having to face, the NIMBYism or the people who believe that we're about to be overrun like Loudoun or Fairfax or, wherever. But in their mind, that's what they think of as growth. Our business community is waking up to the fact that they have to get engaged, in talking about we need housing. We're not talking what is always been referred to as Section 8 housing. We're talking about duplexes. We're talking about townhouses. We're talking about the apartments. We are graduating 9,500 students from our community colleges and our four-year colleges and universities just within my footprint per year. If I could retain 10% of that in our region, what that would do for the business community. But it goes back to what we're here talking about. It's housing. Where are they going to live? And so it really is a narrative that needs to be talked about in a forum, and our businesses must be the people that lead the education about why we need the housing, because the community workers, the zoning people, the economic developers at the local level, can only limit their narrative to what their boards or town council or city councils are saying, So it's incumbent upon a bigger audience to help, talk about those policies and what is needed.
If I can add, can I add on to that? So, in my opinion, I'm from Stanton. I'm born in Stanton, raised in Stanton. I think it's more about people and less about buildings. And with that being said, we have no culture. And to see culture added to our neighborhood would be great. Kind of like what you were speaking on what you guys have going on in Hampton Roads, as far as like I can go to work and know that childcare is taken care of, and then I can come home and know that I'm being taught Microsoft and things like that. Because growing up in Stanton my whole life, I've heard that it's an old folks town, it's a retirement town, right? And so it's like, well, where does that leave us? Because if everybody from, you know, different parts of the world or different parts of the U.S. or even different parts of the state are coming here to retire and settle down, what does that mean for the people who's growing up here and who have to go elsewhere to flourish? I shouldn't have to feel like I need to go elsewhere outside of my community to flourish. I feel like it should be something in place here for me to look forward to, saying, hey, my education, I can get that right here. I can make my neighborhood better. I can learn more from my neighborhood. There's more programs installed for me to thrive right here in this community. And I think that's important because a lot of us will never leave here. A lot of us never have the opportunity to go elsewhere and to succeed elsewhere. I know I'm born and raised in Stanton. The only other place I've lived was prison. So I never got to, you know, go outside of my community and feel like I belong to something. I shouldn't have to feel like I need to leave my community to feel like I need that upliftment. I should be able to get that here. So with that being said, I feel like the people who are in place, which I'm pretty sure many of you guys should just consider culture when you're considering policies. And culture, I don't mean, thank you. I don't mean like, you know, black culture or Italian culture. I don't mean slang. I don't mean lingo, but I mean like togetherness. There is none of that. I haven't, you know, I got my diploma, I graduated, and then that's where my education stopped. I could have went to Blue Ridge and I could have done those things, and I know those are in place for us to learn and grow as well, but I should also feel like I should be able to get a house here or an apartment here and still continue my education here and not have to even go to Harrisonburg if I didn't want to. I could stay here and learn and grow and teach as well. So I feel like that should be something that's considered culture.
What he said.
Chris, okay. One last question from the audience.
Hi. I just want to thank Jay for expanding the conversation to include not just new businesses coming here, but businesses who are already here and their opportunities to expand and or not to expand because we don't have sufficient housing for the folks that work in those plants and in those manufacturing sites. So what do our businesses do? How do they make a difference? How does Hershey and Lycra and Specialty Blades and Best Buy and Mary Baldwin University, how do the major employers and the city of Stanton and Augusta County and the city of Waynesboro, major employers in this area, what are they doing in other parts of the country to support expanded housing opportunities for their employees?
Thank you, first of all. I appreciate that. What a tough question now that you have posed to me. I think that the businesses are looking for some leadership somewhere in their communities, and partly to address what you were just saying. I mean, this is a big component of sort of the quality of life and what we need to be selling. It is what we sell to the businesses that we attract, but sometimes we forget about those in our backyard. I think that there is some momentum. I have been approached, me personally, from some of our existing businesses saying, we have to do something about this. Okay, I can tell you housing is not in my scope of work, what I normally do, but it's foundational, like Jay just said. It's housing, it's childcare, and it's transportation. None of this happens without those three things. I'm going to give a shout out to Courtney Thompson back there with the chambers. I think the chambers in our region are a great advocate for us and a way to get that messaging out to the business community. You're the leaders. You know, you are, this is where the money is, outside of the banks, and then of course the banks are really a part of this as well, but it's a fact that if you start voicing that our prosperity is based upon our ability to continue doing what we're doing here, I think people will start realizing. But that's not what our politicians are hearing, except for yesterday morning, Courtney had a group in and had the delegates there, and they actually heard this firsthand, you know, about the housing and the critical needs and substance, you know, and the health care and the mental health and all of this stuff. And so I think that we need to engage them in a very progressive way to start speaking up.
And I want to give Jay a shout out because he did that. You know, I was going to bring this up. He did that a couple years ago, called me and a few others up when we were at DHCD and said we're going to have a little conversation, and it grew. I mean, it was supposed to be 5 people, and it grew to about 200 people. And this was an economic development conversation about housing. And so just by having those conversations, you know, forcing it, but it's something that needs to be talked about, and all of a sudden, they can't stop talking about it now.
So let's close on that note. You know, I think more conversations are required, right? More opportunities to collaborate with one another and generate these ideas that give us options as it relates to housing. All right, Jay, and Jay, thank you all for your participation. We appreciate you.
Mi nombre es Frank Rivera, pero esta historia no es sobre mí, es sobre mi hermano Mario. Él y yo hemos construido muchas casas juntos, incluyendo varias casas para hábitat para la humanidad. La última que construimos juntos fue muy especial, porque pertenece a Mario y a su esposa Ana. Apenas 2 semanas después de que la casa estuviera terminada y un mes antes que se suponía que debían mudarse, Mario tuvo un accidente automovilístico que lo dejó paralizado desde el pecho hacia abajo. Quedan muchos meses en el hospital y años de terapia, pero en abril de este año se mudaron a su nuevo hogar. Con el fin de ayudar a Ana y a Mario a pasar por este momento difícil, comenzamos a construir una segunda casa detrás de la suya. Mi esposa, Lucy y yo, nuestros hijos, nos mudamos ahí en agosto. Nunca hubo duda de que estaríamos ahí para ellos. Nada es más fuerte que el vínculo entre hermanos. Continuaré construyendo casas para hábitat para la humanidad, pero construir la casa es solo el comienzo de la historia.